In studio right now, candidate for HD 84, Jim Landtroop. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Chad. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Tell folks a little bit about yourself and why you decided to jump into this race.
Oh, absolutely. Well, my name is Jim Landtroop. I've been married for 23 years as of about 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I actually spent my anniversary block walking, knocking on doors.
In the snow?
Not glamorous, but I think I owe her big when this election is over. I have 4 children. I've got 3 boys and a girl. I've got 2 boys that go to South Plains here. I've got 1 boy that I don't know what happened, but he escaped and is going to this little kind of dinky school down in Austin that we don't talk about at the house. And I have a girl that's a sophomore at Friendship High School. We own 2 small businesses. One is I'm a State Farm agent, and I have an agency up in Plainview. But then we also have Landtroop Strategies, which is a marketing and PR firm here in Lubbock. So we're small business owners. Go to Harvest Christian Fellowship over off 82nd near Upland. And, I'm running because I believe that an elected official at whatever level, from city council all the way through, their voting record should reflect the values of the people that they're representing. And, I had the opportunity to serve in the 82nd legislative session. And throughout that session, I was ranked the 4th most conservative member of the Texas House. And living in I think we live in one of the most conservative districts in the state. Mm-hmm. And so I'm running to give the people of this district the opportunity to vote for somebody that has a true, proven conservative voting record, because I think they deserve that.
You're running against the incumbent. When you talk about voting record and conservative values, and you've mentioned oftentimes if you're going to run as a conservative, you should vote as a conservative, have that conservative voting record. Where is his conservative voting record gone in the wrong direction, or where is his voting record gone in the wrong direction, in your opinion?
Well, excuse me, when you look at the totality of the voting record, they cast thousands of votes. And it's not about one single vote here or one single vote there. It's about the totality of the voting record. And it's not just me saying this. You can look at almost any metric you want to look at. The Young Conservatives of Texas give him an F. Empower Texans give him an F. Texas Eagle Forum gives him an F. And probably one of the more important ones is the ranking out of Rice University. That is the most comprehensive, nonpartisan, there's no agenda there, ranking of all of them. And he ranks as the 12th most liberal Republican in the Texas House. So it's not just about a single vote. There are single votes here and there, but it's not just about a single vote here and there. It's about the totality of the votes. And I just don't think living in one of the most conservative districts, having one of the more liberal Republicans, is a match.
Well, you got to have some examples, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so give us some examples.
Okay, he voted against. Well, one of the big ones is Senate Bill 19. When it came from the Senate, it was a great bill. When Byron Cook got a hold of it, it turned into an awful bill, and so he rewrote that bill. And actually, the governor and the attorney general both said that bill was unconstitutional. It basically criminalized your First Amendment right. John Frillo supported that bill, not just once, but twice. It also said that if you were a church, and you look down at Houston, that whole, men using women's bathrooms and all that thing, the churches were really involved in getting that defeated, and they spent a lot of money kind of campaigning to beat that. It would have required them to file with the Ethics Commission and list every donor in their church. And if they didn't, they would have been prohibited from taking tithes again. Why is the government getting involved in churches and telling churches what to do? It's a terrible, horrible bill, but yet John supported that. And I just don't, that's one example. I don't want to give away all the strategy. There are many more, and so we'll have plenty of opportunity to get those out there. But that's just one. Just really, it's unbelievable to me that somebody would vote for a bill like that, much less somebody from West Texas voting for a bill like that.
The Texas Tribune has listed this race as one of the races to watch because of the impact it will have on the speaker's race. And they say that this is one of those, I guess maybe a proxy battle, that you have those who are against the current speaker, Joe Straus, who are challenging if you want to call them lieutenants or supporters of Joe Straus. John Frillo voted for Joe Straus as speaker. Is that another one of your complaints against John Frullo?
I'll tell you, this race isn't about Joe Strauss. This race is about the people of Lubbock having a proven conservative with a conservative voting record representing their values. My voting record represents the values of this district as it is. Now, I can tell you this, as far as the speaker race goes. This is probably the first time, maybe ever, at least in a long time, that the Senate is actually more conservative than the House. And there were a lot of things a lot of conservative issues that came from the Senate that died in the House because of the leadership. Charles Perry's Sanctuary Cities bill is a good example of that. Mm-hmm. That is not going to change unless the leadership in the House changes. Joe's been there for a long time, and I think it's time to have new leadership. We're getting into the same problem just like Washington, D.C. Man, it's time for a change. It's time for a change in Washington, D.C., and I think it's time for a change in Austin as well.
So if you're elected, and let's say and Strauss has his own battle down in San Antonio that he's going through in a primary. I think he has two primary opponents right now.
Yes.
So he's got his own battle. But let's say he wins. Let's say you win. You're both in Austin, and hypothetical situation that may come up. Let's say that there is a speaker's race. One, a more conservative minded speaker is running, but only has the support of maybe 10 members. It's an outside shot that he wins. And then you have Joe Strauss, who's almost a lock to win. How would you, in this scenario, how would you vote?
Well, Chad, you get those hypothetical questions a lot of different issues.
But we've seen that the last couple of sessions where it's been very few,
absolutely.
Very few of that opposition to Joe Strauss.
And, I don't deal in hypotheticals. One, I'm not convinced Joe's even going to be there because he's got the two primary races. If that goes into a runoff, he may not be back. Number two, I don't know, what is the makeup of this House going to be? You look at over the past two sessions, 2 sessions ago, there was a big turnover of conservatives coming in. Last session, there was a big one of conservatives coming in. This one, there's the potential of the big one, big conservatives coming in. And you look at his lieutenants, he lost several before, but even this last session, he lost Harless, Crownover, Keffer, Otto, Aycock, and others. If Byron Cook gets beat, if Charlie Guerin gets it could be a completely different House. So, I'll deal with that when it comes up, but I can tell you that what I would like to see do or happen is that we pick them in the Republican Party, because we have enough people, we have the votes. Mm-hmm. We should pick that person in caucus. And I will make a commitment that if we pick that speaker in caucus, whoever that is, I will support on the floor. Okay, I didn't do that the first time, and we saw what the result of that was. But I will make that commitment. If the Republican Party, if the Republican caucus will commit to voting and picking a speaker in caucus, and then everybody in the party saying, whoever comes out of caucus as speaker, we're going to support them. I'll support
even if that was Joe Strauss.
Even if that was Joe Strauss.
Okay.
As long as we get an opportunity to do it in caucus first.
Okay. We'll take the break. When we come back, we have more questions, some hypotheticals, yes, to get into, and other things that will come up in the future, impacting the state of Texas. Excuse me, Jim Landtroop in studio, running for HD84. We'll be right back. In studio with me, Jim Landtroop, candidate for HD84. The challenger in this race, and out doing a little bit of block walking these past couple of weekends. When you've been going around and talking with voters who are out there and talking about state issues and what's going on the statewide level, what are some of their top concerns that they're relaying to you?
You hear a lot of different concerns. Immigration, of course, is always going to be something on everybody's mind. And the more of like this thing that just happened in Houston not too long ago, and it's just really bringing that to the forefront. And of course, all the presidential stuff going on, that's an important thing to them too. Education, public education is important to people. Religious liberty is actually quite common. We hear that a lot, along with gun rights. Along with taxes, just kind of the issues, and we try to ask people to maybe rank one or two important issues, and we hear all of those. And people really struggle to rank them because, all of them are so important to the people of Texas. So.
Are they frustrated with the current state government, and are they frustrated with leadership, or is that something that you have to convey to them? Because, when I talk to a lot of people out there, they think, hey, we're doing great. As a state, we're doing great. You look at gun laws, we have open carry. That just passed. You look at taxes, we're doing great there. When you look at life issues, obviously, we're pretty good as far as pro-life issues. So is it hard to go out there and tell people, no, you do need to make a switch because we can get more conservative? I mean, how does that relate to people who are out there?
It's actually not difficult. And you're right on the Second Amendment and pro-life issues. Everybody's good with where we're at, but they want to make sure we don't go backwards.
Right.
But they're upset. They are upset with taxes. They're upset with education. They're upset with illegal immigration. I mean, all three of those, which are probably the top three issues, they're very upset, and they are frustrated with what's going on down there, and they are ready to make a change. And I tell you, and it goes back to, there are a lot of the Senate put a lot of good stuff over, and we had the opportunity to address some of the issues that they're concerned about, but it died in the House because of the House leadership. And John's been very open and honest about his pledging his support to Joe Straus. I'm not going to pledge my support to Joe Straus. I'm going to pledge my support to the people of Lubbock, Texas, period.
But earlier you said that even if Joe Straus and you get out of the Republican what was it, caucus, and Joe Straus is the leadership, then you may have some of the same leadership in place going forward.
Yeah, and you're going to have to that's something we're going to have to deal with.
So let me ask, what do you do on that front? Because you just said that, I would go if there was a Republican caucus, but to be honest, I don't think you're a big fan of Joe Straus, well. and I think it's fair to say that. When knocking on people's doors and you're telling them leadership is bad, and that's why we're not getting things through. If you go through and you vote for Joe Straus, wouldn't they come back and say, now, wait a minute, you said leadership was bad, yet you voted for him?
Yeah, and again, that is contingent upon us being in the Republican caucus and agreeing in the Republican caucus as a totality of every single. I mean, it's a unanimous group, a unanimous agreement that we pick the speaker, not the Democrats, because in the past Joe has been picked by some Republicans and all the Democrats. Take Democrats out of the situation, out of the equation. If we make a unanimous agreement as all 98, 99, 100, whatever Republicans say we are going to pick the speaker, we're going to do it in the Republican caucus, and all 100 of us commit to whoever comes out of the Republican caucus, we're, as a group, as a unified group of Republicans, will support them on the floor. That doesn't mean, and we may have to do it, some of us may have to do it holding our nose. If we come to that agreement in the Republican caucus. If we don't come to that agreement in the Republican caucus, then, of course, that doesn't apply. But it's not just Joe Straus. I mean, it is, his chairman, too. A lot of the stuff went through Byron Cook's committee that died.
Right.
That's just but you're responsible as the leader. And like I say, I don't think that's going to change. What happened this session with this conservative things coming out of the Senate, dying in the House, that's not going to change until leadership changes. And it may not be this session, but it will be soon.
Do you think, and I want to move on to one other subject, but I want to ask you this because I find it interesting. Do you think that the Speaker punishes those lawmakers who don't vote for him?
Yes.
Okay, so with that, let me ask you this. If you vote against him and he punishes you, puts you on a really bad committee, because there are bad committees out there, let's be honest, and he puts you on a bad committee, does that hurt Lubbock?
No, it doesn't, because there's, like my granddad used to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And that's in the legislature too. And one of the things that really, really helps this district is the fact that we have Charles Perry as a senator now. Mm-hmm. So you learn this your first session down there, and so there is workarounds that you can do to be just as effective, on or off, whatever committee you're on, as far as in introducing legislation and stuff like that. That's something you learn your first session. That's something I learned through my first session.
Right.
And so understanding now that there's more than one way to skin a cat in the Texas legislature, I don't think it does hurt Lubbock.
What issues do you want to focus on? If elected, and each lawmaker, they have their own personal issues that they want to focus on directly, submit bills, file bills on. What are some of those issues for you?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I think one of the most pressing needs before the state of Texas is our state's rights, is the 10th Amendment. And I want to work with both the general and the attorney general and do everything we can to kind of build that wall and that hedge between us and Washington, D.C. Texas is great because Texans govern Texas, not because bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. govern Texas. And we have to keep it that way because, quite honestly, if we lose the right to govern ourselves, it doesn't matter what you believe or think about anything else. If you just have to follow rules dictated by Washington, D.C., we're in a lot of trouble. So I think, and you see it all the time with Obamacare and EPA and just attacking Texas, trying to take power, the land management grab, all that kind of stuff. We have got to make sure we protect Texas from that.
Visiting with Jim Landtroop, running for HD 84. If you have any questions, feel free to send in an email, chat@kfyo.com. Okay, I have to ask you about this. When you had your announcement speech, there was a back and forth going on about Texas seceding. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And it sounded like you were open to the idea of Texas seceding.
Now, that was taken out of context.
Okay.
And actually, a guy, I think he writes it's for the Texas Tribune. He follows it. That's like his thing. He follows it. And he calls me. And he calls me and he says, I see these tweets and stuff that you're for secession. He goes, is that true? And I said, no. And he goes, well, I didn't think so. He goes, I read what you said. And I didn't think that's what you said, so that was just something taken out of context. And that came kind of in the conversation about states' rights.
Right.
I do believe that we need to, that's extremely important, and that we do need to, work with the governor and the attorney general and do everything we can to build that hedge and that barrier between us and Washington, D.C. Somebody just took that and ran with, he wants to secede. But yeah.
I was just wondering.
Sure, absolutely.
Hey, Convention of States that Governor Abbott has brought up.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I understand why he's doing it, and actually the things he lists out, I agree with all of those. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to do a little more looking into this because, there are some unanswered questions that I want answered first. Who's going to pick the delegates? How many delegates does each state have? Who's going to pick the people that are going to be on the rules committee that sets this up? How can we ensure that we don't have a runaway committee? Because the last thing I want to do is open this up and all of a sudden some rogue state comes in here and starts pushing anti-gun, amendments and changes to the Second Amendment and all these things. We've got to make sure, the Constitution has been around for over 200 years. Is it worth the risk to do, some of these things that Abbott wants to do, knowing that if some of this other stuff could happen as well in a runaway convention? So I need to get some more questions answered.
Real quick, where can people find Jim Landtroop online?
www.jimlandtroop.com.
All right. Jim Landtroop, candidate HD 84. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate you being here.
Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.